Good afternoon, everybody. It's Deborah with Kensington Cross Stitch. Welcome and thank you so much for taking a little bit of time to talk stitchy talk with me today. It is Sunday, August 6th, and I have quite a lot to talk about. It's been about 5 weeks since I filmed a regular Flosstube with you, so I hope that you enjoy. And I do have a lot of like preliminary information to talk about, kind of what I've been up to the last 5 or 6 weeks, plus all of our stitching, and I will admit a fair amount of haul. I went on a couple of trips, which meant I had to explore a couple of stores, and there were some events and things like that, so there's a fair amount of haul to show at the end of the video. So if that's your thing, buckle up, because we've got a little bit to show you. But yeah, welcome. Thank you for joining me again. If you're a new viewer, thank you for taking your time. I hope that you enjoy and you get to see some content that you inspires you and helps you do helps you kind of think about your own stitching, or just gives you something to pay attention to just a teeny little bit while you are doing your own stitching. And for all of the returning subscribers and viewers, thank you. I really appreciate you making the choice to come and spend a little bit of time with me each video. So with that, I think I'll just head into the information about what I've been up to the last 5 or 6 weeks. I've gone on a couple of trips. So I started with a work trip to Boston toward the early part of July. Mostly it was a work trip, so I did a presentation, met with a lot of colleagues, had a lot of good conversations, but I did manage to sneak in some, just a little bit of fun during the trip too. I went with my best friend and we went on a donut tour of Boston, so it was, I would say, a little bit of the history of Boston and a lot about donuts and the history of donuts in Boston. So I really enjoyed it. Apparently this is something that you can find in many cities around the world at this point. So if you are interested in donuts and history and some combination of those, take a look and you might find one near you. But we had a really good time kind of walking around, and I think we sampled donuts from 7 different shops, several varieties each, plus some homemade apple cider. So it was a really good morning, I have to say. It was fun. And it's the Underground Donut Tour Company, I think is what it was. So that was really fun. And then toward the end of my visit, I also took a little jump over to Cambridge, and I visited a store called Gather Here. It's a craft store there, just outside of Boston. And it was really wonderful. It was, I would say, more of a multi-crafters, little bit for everybody kind of store. They had quite a lot of variety of crafts. They had quilting cotton, they had apparel fabric, they had some cross stitch, which I'll talk about in just a second. They had a lot of embroidery, a lot of kits, shishiko, I'm saying that right? Quite a lot of different things. So if you're a multi-crafter, if you're looking for a fun shop to get to in the Boston area, take a look at Gather Here. I did pick up one cross-stitch kit while I was there. They had some Satsuma Street, a lot of kind of, I would say, more beginner cross-stitch patterns. If you want, they have, I think, every possible subversive cross-stitch pattern and kit that is available. They had quite a selection of those and a few others, but it was kind of a, like I said, they were kind of a little bit for everybody, and so it was just fun to get over there and explore and spend a little bit of time. And if I was closer, probably a shop I would get to more, but I had a good time with that. I also took a Saturday a few weeks ago and went up to Stitch New England. Rachel, who is CT Stitcher on Instagram, and I like to do that every once in a while and just get up there and spend a Saturday stitching in the shop, visiting with Pam, hearing the latest on the retreat, upcoming Stitch New England retreat, seeing the shop and what kind of changes that she's made recently, and of course doing some stitching, doing a little bit of shopping, the usual. So it was really fun. And then from my house it's about 2 hours up to the shop. For Rachel it's a little bit longer. She comes and picks me up, and we have the drive there and the drive back, and I think we always find plenty to talk about when it comes to stitching. Speaking of Rachel, before I forget, if you are in the Connecticut area, next Saturday, August 12th, is our next Connecticut Stitching Circle Day. That is our official new name, and we'll be at the Wethersfield Panera from 10 o'clock on Saturday, August 12th. So we would love to see you there. I feel like we've gotten a little bit of a kind of a steady group coming, and we're looking forward to that. After Stitch New England, I also went on a family vacation to Maine just last week. So it was really wonderful to get up there and visit. I've made a flying trip to Maine and back last summer for Stitch Maine. I know I have driven through Maine on the way to Maritime Canada, for example. I think that I have been to Acadia National Park before, but it was when I was so young, I have absolutely no recollection of it. So we had my parents and my brother's family and a couple of my uncles. We all got together and had just a really fun time exploring Maine. So we did spend a couple of days in Bar Harbor. Absolutely had a chance to have some Maine blueberries. I'm pretty sure they were frozen because we're just heading into blueberry season, so maybe from last year, but they were still delicious anyway. And so there were pancakes and there were all kinds of things, and absolutely bought a mug to commemorate the experience, because if you don't have a mug from your vacation, did it really even happen? That's the question. So we spent a little bit of time in Bar Harbor, but really the purpose was to get to Acadia National Park. I grew up in a family where our family vacations for many years was you just packed up the minivan as full as you could stuff it, and we would go camping and we would drive across the country and we would see all kinds of things: parks, museums, historical sites, weird and wacky things that just looked interesting along the way. And so it's very much kind of ingrained in the life that the kind of life that I grew up with, is to go and visit those things. So continuing to do that as an adult, and getting to go back now with my parents as an adult was really fun too. So we did make a point of getting up to the top of Cadillac Mountain. Cadillac Mountain is, at least for certain parts of the year, the first place where the sun hits the United States territory when it rises in the morning. And so apparently there's somewhere else where it's a little bit later, or it's part of the year is somewhere else, but that is what it's famous for. And so we got to drive up to the summit there. We went at the end of the day for sunset. It was a little bit of an overcast evening, and so we didn't get to see quite everything, but gorgeous view of downtown Bar Harbor, all of the kind of looking out over the park and seeing that. And it was just a really, really wonderful, it was just beautiful. It was absolutely gorgeous. And so it was enjoyable. And that was essentially the first day. We kind of left home, drove all the way up and did that. And so it was a really great first start to the day. And then the next day we got on the park bus. So LL Bean, among I think a number of others, sort of host a free bus that will take you many different places throughout the park. It cuts down on traffic, cuts down on emissions, all kinds of things. And they've been doing this for quite a number of years. And so you can get on various bus routes and get to quite a lot of the park that way. And it was just a really good way to get to see something. We were only there for about a day and a half. And so it was a good opportunity to see a lot in a very short period of time. And so we took the loop road route and went a number of different places. And we stopped at, there's a kind of a garden that we stopped at, and it's really neat because you actually get to see each section is a different part of the park, and the flora and fauna, if I'm using those words correctly, that grow in those different parts of the park. So there's a part that's like the sand, that's, you can see where some of the blueberries grow, you can see where some of the different plants grow. And so I really enjoyed seeing that in a very compact space if you don't have time to see every bit of the park, because you could spend days and days there to really explore. You at least get to see a little bit of the nature of the park. And so that was probably one of my favorite stops. We stopped at Thunder Hole, which is a place where the water crashes into the side of some rocks. We were there during low tide, so there wasn't even a little bit of a rumble, but it apparently is quite impressive if you're there at the right time of day. The beach was very much the popular spot. Everybody else on the bus was getting off at the beach, but we took a miss on that one during the day and actually went back in the evening to see the sunset. We had hoped that we would get to do some stargazing there. Again, it was an overcast night, but it was still just wonderful to sit, watch the sun go down, and relax for a little bit. And yeah, so we stopped at a couple other places, hit the park shop at the end, of course, and all of that. But it was a really wonderful just chance to get away, spend time with people, talk, and visit and see. Kind of, we don't have as many national parks on the East Coast as they do out west and in other parts of the country, so it was a wonderful opportunity to see that. We also, when we were heading back out of Bar Harbor, absolutely made a point of stopping at the LL Bean store, which seems like such a, that's not even the best way to describe it. The LL Bean complex, they have multiple stores. It's huge. It's open 24 hours a day. If you need anything related to anything that LL Bean sells, you can buy it. Everything was there. It was pretty impressive. I bought a couple of shirts, and we also were kind of grabbed lunch in Freeport, and then we also went to a little bit of a bookstore. There's apparently a massive globe right outside of town, the Garmin Globe. DeLorean, Garmin Globe, something like that. Unfortunately, we missed that seeing it, but you can see it kind of as you're driving down the freeway. We also spent a little bit of time in Portland, so we have some extended family who are still there, and so we were able to catch up with them, and we got a little bit of instruction on how to go out into the harbor and catch lobster, and all of the regulations that kind of apply to that, what you can keep, what you can put back, what do you do with the ladies when you catch the ladies, all kinds of things. And so it was really interesting to hear it from guys who spend their life doing this. And then we had also rented out a boat for a kind of a large family group, and we went out and took a harbor tour. So we're there for the sunset. We saw the Portland headlight, looking back on Portland and seeing a lot of different sights in the harbor. I love boats. I love being on the water. And so it was just a really great opportunity to do that. We had some kids with us that had never gotten to do something like that. And you could see a little bit skeptical at the beginning, but by the end, they thought this was a pretty cool thing. So we did that. And then we stopped at Fort McClary on the way, which is kind of something that has been built up over time, used in various ways. I did learn that Abraham Lincoln's vice president, while he was the active vice president, went as a private to the fort during the war, which I thought was really interesting, to go as the active vice president to be a private in the war. So I was like, there's gotta be a story on that one, but haven't looked it up yet. And then we also stopped at Nubble Lighthouse, which is just one kind of off the coast of Maine there. I think we were still in Maine. Obviously visited that store as well. Had some fish and chips, you know, kind of the like stuff that you do when you're in coastal New England. And yeah, and then spent some weekend with family in New Hampshire. So it was a busy weekend. It was a busy week, but we had a lot of fun, and I did pick up a couple of souvenirs along the way that will definitely translate into some cross-stitch accessories. So I will show you those a little bit later on. Also, just yesterday, there was Friendstitch, which is the online retreat that is hosted by Bent Creek and Heart in Hand. This was the 4th year of Friendstitch and the 3rd time that I've been able to visit. So I will talk about that a little later. And I already talked about the stitching day. So yeah, that is kind of what I've been up to for the last few weeks. And I know I've talked in the past about doing a video on some of the quilting that I've done. I had actually a number of people who were very interested in seeing the Legos that I've been working on. So I will do those in future videos. And I've got one more kit parade to work on. But yeah, for today, it's going to be from here on out, it's going to be cross stitch and then cross stitch related haul. So that's what we've got going on at this point. So the first things that I have to show you, I have two, well, I do have to say, I have not been stitching as much as I normally would, given that I haven't been with you for quite some time, but as it took me like 15 minutes to get through what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks, hopefully that's forgivable. And I wouldn't say that I had lost my stitchy bug. I think it was more just I was interested in other things. I was working on some sewing projects, working on some on the Legos, various different things. And then the travel, I didn't have as much stitching time as I thought I might have on some of my trips. So I would say what I've got is probably a usual 2 to 3 week range of stitching, but still a couple of things to show you. So I do, that being said, the whole reason I went on that tangent, despite the fact that I haven't done a huge amount of stitching, or maybe as much as you might expect, I have 2 starts and finishes. Like, did I work on the things that I said that I was going to work on, or the summer projects that I had already started? Nope. I started 2 totally different projects and then I finished them. So the first one to show you is, this is a Sue Hillis freebie. And it is just a watermelon that is slowly being eaten. I mentioned this in one of my Kit Parade videos recently. This is a Sue Hillis chart that was a freebie released a number of years ago. It's never been released for sale. And so it's something that you kind of have to just stumble upon in some way. I was lucky enough to do that. I'll be passing this on to another stitcher when I'm done. It's already been claimed. But it's really fun and one that I wanted to do while it was still summertime. And as you see, well, you will notice, you may not be surprised, I forewent? What's the proper word of that in the past tense? Anyway, I did not stitch the border because that just seemed like unnecessary stitching. So I did leave the border off, but I did stitch everything else. And this is, that is actually kind of real, true to life color. This is a very bright green. It's a 30 count R&R fabric from R&R, and it's called Jabco Green. I bought it quite a number of years ago, so I don't actually know if it is still available or not, but it is just a very vivid kind of artificial lime green. Really fun, and so I thought it would be a great way to highlight the watermelon. And I did, you'll notice that I didn't leave myself huge borders. I knew that, but that was because if I stitched it in that direction, I still have quite a lot of the fabric left for future projects. And then I wound up stitching it using primarily Cosmo floss. I had found a couple of quilting shops not too far from me that sell not the full range, but a limited range of Cosmo floss. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity to try those out. And I realized I just kind of randomly picked a couple of colors that I thought would be good basics, and then realized that this would actually be good for this project. And then I did throw in one Victorian motto variegated. It's not heavily variegated, so you can't see it to a significant degree in the project, but I just thought that would be fun. So a good opportunity to try out Cosmo. I like them. They stitched up very smoothly. I think that arguably, this is one of the things people say is the Cosmo white is easier to stitch with and makes your stitches look a little bit neater. I know a lot of people are frustrated or kind of feel like DMC white is not the easiest or cleanest one to stitch with. I would say it was very smooth. I don't know, I didn't feel like it was the miracle, but it was very nice to work with. It probably was a little bit easier to use than DMC white. I would say they're very comparable, so I don't know if I'm going to go out and like buy all the Cosmos floss, but they were very nice. They're good, and if this is what you have access to, absolutely go ahead and do that. So I stitched that with Cosmo floss, and I did actually, for the first time, I used the pin stitch. I had never used the pin stitch before, and the pin stitch is a technique that when you have just a standalone stitch and you don't want to carry a thread for some reason, because you might be able to see it, and this fabric is one that you can absolutely see your floss when you carry it, and so I finally decided to give it a try. I've heard about it, and this was just a good opportunity to do that, particularly because it was black fabric on a linen that was showing the floss behind it very much. So I did that. Surprisingly easy. There are a couple of really good tutorials on it online. I watched Climbing Goat Designs video on that recently, and so use the pin stitch. I would definitely use that in the future when you have a lot of kind of dangling stitches. And then, yeah, so I've gotten that all done, and I'm thinking about what I want to do for finishing. Because it's so long and narrow, it will require something kind of specific, I think, in order to find a good finish for it. The thing that I am currently thinking about is something that I picked up at Michael's last fall maybe. Obviously it's a rolling pin, and it's got this little metal phrase on it. I think it's probably, I mean, I feel like that's a pretty good set of dimensions for this piece. I think if you hang it this way, if you look at it, you're like, that's a rolling pin. But I don't know if you look at it, you would not automatically be like, well, that's a sideways rolling pin. So I think it could work. This is held on with kind of tiny little metal nails, and so I'm going to try and pop those off. I will probably need to use some spackle to fill up those holes. And I have a spray paint for a slightly darker red. I may try and do that, and I might just dress it up just a little bit. But I think that that's what I'm going to do, and then hang it maybe with some gingham ribbon here. And then originally I had planned to do this and just have it out for my summer display, but this might actually be one that could hang in my kitchen pretty much year round. I have got, you know, the side of a couple of cabinets that need some stitching. So I think that's what we're going to do. This one will need a little bit of work, but I think that's going to be pretty successful. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully I will show that to you in the near future as a fully finished object. I will say I was actually at Michael's just recently, and this is back again this season. It's now gray and it says Kiss the Cook, but it looked like it was otherwise exactly the same piece. So if that's something you're interested in, I know it's at least in stock in my local Michael's. So that's that. So that was my first start and finish. You don't need to watch me totally organize myself. The next one that was my start and finish is related to a piece that I did show in my last regular Flosstube. You may remember that I showed this little Avengers piece that I had turned into a tote bag many years ago. Didn't do it properly, and so I wound up just cutting it apart recently, and I was like, I need to find a different finish for this piece. And I had put out kind of my couple of ideas about it, and then I'd asked you for your ideas, and you all came up with way better ideas than I had. So thank you to everybody. I had somebody suggest, I think this one was maybe my favorite just suggestion, was you should turn it into a project bag and the Avengers will protect your stitching. It's like, that is what the Avengers are for. Absolutely. So that one was really fun. Flat fold, the box finish, kind of like Kathy Haberman does the 25th, 4th, things like that. So a box finish. I thought that one was a really good idea. Finishing it on a book, a few other things. So thank you to everybody who suggested finish ideas. Like I said, your ideas were way better than mine, so I appreciate it. The one that I wound up going with was from Sharon, and she suggested doing a drum finish on this one, which I was like, that is a great idea. I've never done a drum finish, but time to start. So I will make that into a little drum finish. And then when I decided to do that, I decided that I needed something to go on the top, because often drum finishes have a stitched top as well. So I was thinking about that, and the first thing that came to my mind in terms of shape was, of course, Cap's shield. So I went on Etsy and I was looking for some patterns for Cap's shield that I could use, and I found some. They're definitely out there, but I also found the one that I actually went with, which is this one. And it's Till the End of the Line. And it actually is Cap's shield. If you can see here, on this side you can see Captain America's shield, and on the other side you can see the Winter Soldier's arm and his star motif. So the Winter Soldier is my very favorite comic book character ever, ever, ever. The movies, you only wound up in the end getting a glimpse of his character in the movies, but if you read Ed Brubaker's run on Captain America, it's fantastic. He's a wonderful, fantastic character. Nuanced. It's great. So he's my favorite character, and I saw this one, and Captain America the Winter Soldier as a movie is a fantastic movie. It's probably the best Marvel movie, I would say. And my best friend and I both love it. And so this is also a phrase that is close to our hearts. So I saw this and I was like, well, that's the end of that idea, negotiation. This is the one that we are going with. So I stitched that, and it is, let's see here, Till the End of the Line. This one on vacation with me, so you can tell it got pretty darn beat up. And this is Cat in the Crafty Hat is the designer. I'll put all of this down below. But you can see a little bit more if you finish it in a hoop that it really is kind of in a circular shape there. So that will be the top of my drum. I didn't have, actually I did have exactly the same kind of fabric. This was a 28 count even weave, but it was a different pack. And so it didn't quite match as well as it could have. And so this one is a 28 count Quaker Cashel. And so I went with that one because it matched just slightly better. And then that'll be the top of my drum. I do have to say that in terms of size, that top one is barely going to fit based on how much fabric I have on this. So we will be stitching with a very narrow seam allowance in order to get that, but I think it'll work out fine. But yeah, so that one is on its way to a finish. So thank you again to Sharon for that great idea. Had to rush through and do another piece for the top of it, and then hopefully in the near future you will see that as a drum finish. Never done a drum before, but I watched Vonna Pfeiffer's tutorial, and Vonna Pfeiffer makes you feel like you can do anything, and you can do anything. So hopefully that will be something that is an accomplishment in the near future. I did make a couple of changes to the floss that was called for. These were essentially, it was a couple of different reds, several different grays. There was a lot of gray stitching in that one, and then a blue. And then all I did is I just pulled the colors from the original piece, and I stitched using those so that they do match. So that was till the end of the line. So those were my two recent starts and finishes. And what I have to show you at this point is my two ongoing annual whips. And then we've got chatter about Friendstitch, and then we've got the whole portion of the video. So just to keep you updated on my two ongoing whips, I am currently working on a temperature sal for this year, and I am doing Rainbow Temperature Supernova by Climbing Goat Design. And I am doing the minimum and maximum version. So every day you stitch a minimum and a maximum. And I am doing my own color scheme, kind of blues and pinks, purples, greens, but kind of the full range. Every 2 to 3 degrees is where you change colors on that one. And since I'm filming on Sunday and I normally stitch this on Sunday, for the first time I think ever, I'm actually caught up, and you can see exactly everything as of yesterday. So that is where we are on that one. And as you can see, it has definitely been warmer here recently. I've actually had several rows where both the minimum and the maximum is a pink, which is kind of my current medium warm temperature. So even in the evenings, it didn't get all that cool here. But we'll be keeping to work on that one. I think this is just absolutely such a beautiful chart. It's fun to work on, but I love seeing each of those little different days come together with the colors. So I will continue to work on that one. Oh, I did want to say, one of the things that I know people who do the temperature charts is sometimes some people stitch where you live, regardless of whether or not you're traveling during that time. Like wherever you roam, you're still stitching your home temperature throughout the year. And some people change it up depending on where they travel. So I could have put the temperature in Boston, the temperature in Bar Harbor, things like that. I decided just for ease of administration, I would just stitch my home temperature. So I don't have to quite remember every single thing where I was and what I was doing. I think it's just kind of an easier way to do it, but it also is by the end of the year, it's not just specifically about me, but it's also about where I lived, whether I was there or not. But that was how I chose to do that one. So even though I was on vacation and have gone on a couple of trips, I just continue to stitch my local temperatures for that. And then the last piece that I have to show you an update on is my ongoing annual project, and it is Christmas Market by Twin Peak Primitives. And if you're new here, I have rearranged this quite significantly. So rather than being in this clustered rectangle, I have a long, narrow piece that will look like a wall runner when we're done. And I am using most of the called for colors. I did substitute out a few overdyed, although they're very subtle. So honestly, you can't really tell that much of a difference between the overdyed and the called for DMC, but really fun, bright palette of colors. And this is where I am. Let's see. There we go. I am getting close to nearly being done with this one, only a couple of more months. And the one that I finished this time is the glue vine. In June, we did Kinderpunsch, and then this time I did glue vine. And I talked in my last video about what Kinderpunsch and Glühwein are. They're just kind of special drinks that you find at a Christmas market. And I wanted to put the two, I knew that I wanted to put the two of those together. And then I also made the mug match a mug that I picked up when I was visiting a Christmas market. And then I made the bottle. You can't get bottled Glühwein. I made it kind of match that as well. So those are the only changes I made to those two. And as you can see, we're getting there. I have 3 more months left. I am essentially just dividing this up, taking it one stall or one motif a month. I have not started August yet, so I'm actually I'm not running behind because it's early August, but I will have a new one of those to post, show you later in the month. So I only have 2 more stalls left, and then I have the market entrance, and let's see here. So I've got these 2 stalls and then the market entrance, and I've adapted a little bit so there's people, kind of more people walking into the market entrance. So that'll be fun. The one thing I have been thinking as I see this actually take shape and not just in the pattern, I am considering, can't believe I'm saying this, I'm considering putting a border around it. The edges do all match up. Sorry, this isn't going well. All of the edges along the stall do match up in terms of the way that they are arranged, but it feels like it, when you look at it, kind of just looking at it, you can't really quite tell that it is all lined up. And so I was thinking that I might put a border around just to kind of wrangle things and make it feel a little bit more firmly like it is one coherent piece. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm thinking about it. I was thinking of maybe doing just something very, very simple. One of the things that's very big at Christmas markets often is strung lights. And so I was thinking maybe just a very simple one stitch wide border that has some kind of light pieces on it. I'm totally not describing this well at all. But maybe something simple, maybe looking at a couple of border books and seeing if there's something else that just seems like that. But anyway, as somebody who normally avoids the border at all costs, let me know what you think. And if you think that this piece needs a border, doesn't need a border, I don't know. Let me know what you think. I would absolutely like to hear from other people who have more experience in this area than I do. So that is Christmas Market by Twin Peak Primitive. And that is the stitching that I have to show you for this time. So if that's what you're here for, and that's all you're here for, thank you so much for joining me, and we will catch you again in the next video. But if you're here for more of the content, I am going to spend just a little bit of time talking about the Friendstitch retreat that I was at yesterday, and then going through all of my various recent acquisitions, because like I said, there's just a couple of those. So as I mentioned, Friendstitch is an online retreat that is run by Bent Creek and Heart in Hand, and they have been partnering together. They've been friends in the industry for many, many years, and actually pre-COVID came up with the idea of a virtual retreat, something that was specifically for people who may not be able to travel to a physical retreat for any reason, and they had come up with this idea. COVID hit and it was like, well, this is perfect. And so I think that they've all met I think it's been kind of since the pandemic that they all actually met, but the idea had started before then. And then every year they have been saying, are you going to do another one? Are you going to do another one? There's always that question. And they so far have come back and done it every time. And they did announce yesterday that they will absolutely be back next year. So September 21, 2024 will be the 5th anniversary of Friendstitch. So I haven't put it in my calendar yet, but I wrote it down because I'm going to put it on my calendar to make sure I'm there. It's a really fun virtual event. There were probably over 450 people there yesterday. And then this year, what they've done is they were doing a pop-up event. So it was a little bit smaller. In the past, it was like a 4-hour block in the morning or in the afternoon. And they would basically run the retreat twice in one day, which I imagine was probably exhausting. This year, what they're doing is they're doing 2 pop-up retreats. One was yesterday, and there's one in October, and they're 3 hours. Kind of, you can come from wherever you are in the world, but it was 12 to 3 Eastern time, and everyone kind of. They always have a theme. So this year was Halloween. They've done Christmas in the past. The one that's coming up in October is needlework themed. I do have to say, the registration for that one has already closed. But like I said, September 21, 2024. But you always go and there is always a box that you receive, and you always are told, do not look, do not open your box, because one of the first things that you do in the retreat is everybody gets to open the boxes together and go through everything. And it's just a really fun community kind of way to appreciate stitching. So there's that. They talk about how they got into the industry. One of my favorite sections is they actually talk about the evolution of the design that they gave out. There's usually several different designs, one big one and a couple of small ones. And one of the things they've started doing is talking about how they collaborate together, because it is a jointly designed project between the 2 companies. And then they also show kind of how it progressed from the original idea to the final product. And it's just a really interesting insight into the back end part of stitching that we don't get a chance to see all that often. So that one is really fun, and kind of making sure how they make their 2 different styles work together and ideas that they have. They have sometimes brought in some kind of guest. And so yesterday was Amy Brucken of Amy Brucken Designs. And so she had also designed, this time she actually designed something for the retreat and came and talked about herself and her history with cross-stitching, and then did a Q&A with people. Sometimes they do a finishing class. Have different Mona from Silver Needle will come and talk about how to do finishing. A lot of different things. So it is a packed couple of hours and is really fun, and something that I absolutely look forward to every year. One thing is they, at least in the past, have been very clear that they do not intend to release these designs ever. Like some retreats, you wait a couple of months, you wait a year. Year is often kind of the normal one, and then anybody can access it. At least as of last year, they were pretty adamant that they are not intending to release these, that they are something special for the people who were there. With the 5th anniversary, I don't know, because I know they get a lot of questions about their designs, but as of now, it's still just something for those who attend the retreat. Oh, the other thing that we learned yesterday is we learned how to do the colonial knot, which is a variation, something you can do instead of a French knot. I really need to practice that and try that. And then we also learned how to do the leaf stitch. There's usually a specialty stitch, and so we got some instruction on that. So it's been something I've been looking forward to for months, of course. And then I am signed up for the one in October as well. And it doesn't disappoint. It never disappoints. So it was fun. And then, so yeah, that was Friendstitch. And if it's something hasn't been on your radar yet, next year's retreat is coming up. And with that, I think I will show you what I got in the box, because I know that people are often curious about that. And then that will lead us into the recent acquisition section. So with that, I can show you everything that was in our adorable little box. So the first thing that we saw was a tote bag, and this is their logo for Friendstitch. So everything was kind of tucked away in the bag. And I will say, you know me, my very first thought on this was, that's going to get turned into a project bag. So I will definitely be doing that someday. absolutely, definitely someday it will happen. So great tote bag. And then, as I mentioned, there were three. There are several patterns that we get every time, and this year there were three different patterns. One was designed by Amy Brucken, and it is called Moonlight Magic, and it's this witch on top of that grinning pumpkin. I've said in the past, I'm not a huge Halloween stitcher, but part of the reason I signed up is because one, Friendstitch is amazing, and two, because they don't release the patterns, I'm like, if I didn't sign up and they released something that I absolutely loved, I would have such FOMO. So I sign up. I'm like, it doesn't matter. There will be something I love, and I loved it. So this pumpkin is adorable. I will stitch that pumpkin right there, his little grin. So that was Amy Brucken's contribution. And then the main project piece was Happy Halloween. And it's just this tiny little, no, I almost said it's a tiny little town. We did talk about tiny towns. But it's this little Halloween town and all of these different motifs. And we saw kind of the evolution of this. Like this pumpkin, for example, originally had like a huge grin. It was fantastic. I love that. My favorite aspect is this little ghost with a bandit handkerchief on his neck, pulling that little cat. That is going to get stitched up 100% very, very shortly. This little flower with that tiny little owl. Oh my gosh, he's so cute. And the ghost kind of rising up out of the smoke of the house. Really fun. Oh my goodness. I totally gonna stitch some of those, but that cat with the little ghost, hands down my favorite. And we got a couple of little beads. Their eyes are beads, and a wooden button that we're going to use. And then you can actually see this. This was the third piece that we received, and it was Crow. And that came, we did get the floss that is for all three of these. So this year we got kind of classic Colorworks colors, and you can use it, and there's enough for all three of the pieces if you want to stitch it. So really great Halloween colors there. And then you could, optionally, you could sign up for to have the fabric sent to you. I decided not to because I figure I've got enough fabric, I can take care of that, but it is definitely something that you can do. And then one of them is almost always fully kitted. So we did get some 28 count cashel for the crow piece. And that is the little crow. He's great. I love those little pumpkins. And we learned the leaf stitch, which is that little stitch. You can't see it very well, but we learned how to do that stitch. And we got full finishing instructions, and it will go in this little hoop. And then we got this kind of piece that goes in the back of your project, which was really fun. So we got a quick idea about, this one was not a full finishing class, but we got some quick instructions and then some written instructions for that. So those were the three class project pieces, which were all fantastic. We always get a little piece of linen to just practice. It's a little square with a needle. And so that way, if you want to, you can work on the stitches or work on something that you're receiving instruction on during class. I've actually used these for very small pieces in the past. So great piece of linen there. We got a little coaster, which is Trick or Treat, just a little guy. That one I may see if I can fit him into a back of a hoop. Actually, it does, just fits. So you could potentially do that. We got a notebook with some little, there we go, for making notes. I actually gonna leave that out because I need a new notebook. We got a couple of little buttons that had different pieces of the design. And of course, several people were like me, were like, needle minders. So that's what's going to happen with those. We got one of those little pumpkins that accordion folds out. So that one's going to go up in the fall for decor. And we got some candy. Smarties are my favorite. So yeah, that was Friendstitch. That was what was in the box. Really fun. And something that I'm already looking forward to October's, of course, because I want to see what they do this time. I'm going to put next year's on the list. And it's really fun to get to watch colleagues, people who have worked together for so many years, support each other, help support other people in the industry, and then to be so conscious about people, some of us who can't travel, aren't able to travel for various reasons. The Friendstitch retreat was actually my first online retreat. It was my first retreat. It was getting to experience it. I didn't know what to expect. Went on to go to do some in-person retreats, but to consciously think about people who may not be able to or can't get to an in-person retreat is I thought was really thoughtful. And I like that love that they're continuing to do it, and I hope that they, you know, they've already promised us year 5. Who knows beyond that? But as long as they offer it, I will be signing up. So it is, to me, good value. It's a great opportunity to hear from them, learn different things, jam-packed full of good content. So that was Friendstitch. And then with that, what I've got is my fairly massive stash of recent acquisitions, which I will show to you. So again, if this is your dropping off point, thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time. So I'm going to show you something that I bought recently just to kind of get it out of my way here. This is, I've done this in the past a little bit, and sometimes I'll show you some prefab, kind of already ready-made finishing pieces that I buy, thinking about what I might use with them in the future. This is just a massive wooden acorn jar. I picked it up at Joann not too long ago. It's in their current fall line, and I just thought, one, I thought it was really fun, but I had just recently watched the designer from Whilst Iris Naps, I forget her name, she has done a spool finish tutorial, and that has become a very popular finish recently. And I was like, I should check this out, and I watched the video. It is one of the easiest finishes you can do. Like, it's really easy. I'm definitely going to be doing that in the future, but until I actually have some spools, I saw this one just a couple of days later, and I thought the concept is pretty much exactly the same. You could finish a piece, wrap it around, and lace it in the back on this pretty much in the exact same way you could do a spool. So that, I think, is going to be a really fun fall finish. I did have the thought, if I think out on the drum finish for my Avengers piece, this would actually work for the Avengers piece, and then I could put my little till the end of the line piece on the top here. I don't think I'm going to think out. I hope not. But anyway, I thought that was really fun, and I'm looking forward to trying that one. So that's sort of the big one that's in the way here. Let me bring out my little basket here. Quite a lot. So these are not in any kind of particular order other than what was precarious in my basket. So I'm actually going to start with some things that I picked up while I was traveling at Acadia and on the Maine vacation. So obviously on our minds at all points is the possibility of needle minders. So I did buy a little Cadillac Mountain pin. It doesn't actually matter what it looks like. Cadillac Mountain pin, and then you can just knock the back off, use a metal file, and put some magnets on it. I also bought one from Nubble Lighthouse. This one is probably, honestly, too big to be a needle minder for me, in part because the hoops that I stitch in are only about this big. So when you've got a needle minder that big, it takes up a fair amount of your space, but it was also just a fun souvenir. And then I also bought this tiny little tag. And again, it's another Cadillac Mountain tag, and it's just flat, and it's got a little geological note on the back. So that would be another one that you could very easily turn into a needle minder. So I got those. I picked up this Rare Birds pin. Again, too big to be a needle minder. It's actually made out of, I think, maybe leather, and then painted leather. In the shop, I was like, I came up with a brilliant idea for what I would do with this, and it was stitching related, but now I don't remember, so it will come back to me eventually, but I thought it was just really cute. And then, what was that? I've got a postcard. This was from the garden that I mentioned, and that will become, I'll laminate that and make it into a thread card for future projects. And I got a little Nubble Lighthouse building block set. It's not Legos, obviously, but I've noticed these at a number of different parks, and they actually are specifically for these different sites. The first place I saw it was at a fort in Puerto Rico, and I bought it for my dad. And because he became a huge Lego buff in his retirement. And so I bought this one, and I think they're a great little souvenir. So I will be putting that one together at some point. Not stitching related, but I know some of you are interested in Legos and Lego adjacent things. I also have my National Parks passport with my very fancy rubber band. So I did get a couple of stamps when we were there. Let's see if I can quickly pull them up. Probably not. Nope, I'm only pulling up Philadelphia at the moment. Anyway, it's a little book. If you have not seen these, it's just a passport where you can go and you can get stickers, you can get cancellations from every park that you visit, and that way you can work your way across the country and see national parks. So I actually remembered to bring my passport book with me as opposed to just having to put it on a piece of paper or a sticker and adding it later. So that was fun. Totally different is I've received the latest in the Gather Round series from Kathy Haberman. This is her annual series, and every quarter we're getting a seasonal piece. And so this is the fall related piece, really fun with the pumpkins in the house. And then we got our kind of linen that we'll be using, some updated floss. Some of the floss does carry over from set to set, and some of them are new, so we always get a little bit of floss in there. We get the pieces that we need for the finishing to go on the magnetic backs, and another little piece of notebook paper. Oh, they're post-it notes. Fantastic. I'm also going to set those aside. So that was the latest in Gather Round. I will admit I've been feeling a little bit guilty that I've been getting these, and I've started one from the spring set, the very first set that we got, and I haven't done anything else on them. So I'm thinking that I may take these into my office and work on these during my lunchtime stitching. And again, kind of dividing them up. And I think that they're not huge pieces. And so I think that maybe I could accomplish one of those a month. And that way by maybe next year I can have them out. So that's what I'm thinking about for those, because I really would like to actually, use this series that I had been getting. Oh, when I was in Boston, I mentioned that I went to the Gather Here shop. And a lot of the cross stitch that they had wasn't something that I would do, but I did see one Satsuma Street piece that I had not seen before. It's a cat. Of course I bought it, but I had not seen this one before. I thought the colors were just absolutely fantastic, and that masquerade. His name is Mr. Cat. I mean, come on. It's got all of the floss. It's got all of the beading. So that one that had to come home with me. So that's Mr. Cat by Satsuma Street. And then I did pick up a tote bag because I went through the vendor hall. I had to go through the vendor hall, talk to some people. And one of the vendors was giving out, you could either get a t-shirt or you could get a tote bag with the phrase of your choice, and they were all Boston related. So of course I picked the one that said, "Librarians are wicked schmart." Sorry everybody in Boston for my accent. So again, I picked this up and we'll turn this into a project bag at some point in the future. And then, this is the haul that I got from Stitch New England when I was there, because I feel like I love going and I love getting to stitch and spend time with people, but it's also a good opportunity to gladden the hearts of merchants and my own self. So that's what I did. I did pick up another Mill Hill kit. Recent viewers will know that these have become something of a bit of a favorite with me recently. And this is a tomato pincushion. The model on this one is what sold me. Like in the box, I was like, in the package, I was like, oh, that's cute. But the model is just really stunning. The colors pop. And so I had to pick up that one, and that's Tomato Pincushion by Mill Hill. I picked up a little tacky bill. This is just a little thing for beading since I'm doing more beading. And it's kind of like a little old CD case, and it's got some tacky, something inside that's tacky, and it holds your beads. So I figured, given that I'm working on more of those, I picked that up, and summer was on my mind, so I picked up that one. I picked up just a couple of skeins of Bella Rosa by Classic Colorworks. It's probably not going to show up well, but this is a white with pink highlights floss, and I think it's a really subtle pink color, and I had used it last year on another project and I liked it, and I said if I see some more of this I'm going to get some. The last time I found it in a shop, because of the dye lots, it sometimes has a tendency to be more tan than pink, which isn't what I want. And so the last time I'd seen it, it was the tan one, and this one had the pinks. So I picked up a couple of skeins of those just because I figure it's worth having those. I also, this was a piece of stitching that I have been able to not get into it up until now, but I got totally sold on this, is pins. Look at this little seagull pin mini. This is just another button company. And then I picked up that one with the little lighthouse and the shells. Adorable. This is what I need, is yet another thing to buy for my stitching. And then these are puntini needles, and they're little yarn, skeins of yarn. Adorable. So I had to pick up a couple of those. Thanks, Pam, for getting me into something totally new. And then I picked up some fabric, and this is Fox and Rabbit Beetroot, and this is a 36 count. Gorgeous color. It's just a fat eighth. Gorgeous pink, kind of a beet color. So that will be something that I can stitch on at some point in the future. And then since I was there, I got to pick up my Atomic Ranch fabrics of the month, and this is Prairie Land. So I was able to pick that up while I was there. So that was my haul from Stitch New England. And then, oh, the last thing I wanted to show you is I had signed up several months ago for a Christmas in July box, and this was from Crazy Annie's, not a company I had bought from before. It popped up in my feed. Oh, Teresa Kogut had done one of the patterns for it, and so I was like, I guess I was in a spendy mood, and I was like, sure, I'll do a box. And so, as usual, not everything in there was my thing, but that's totally okay. And I will plan to give those out to others in the future as we get kind of into that season, or freebie tables, whatever I choose to do with them. But there were a number of things that I did like, and so I kept some of those, and I will show that to you in case this is something you're thinking about in the future. I believe that Crazy Annie does these kind of theme boxes from time to time. So if you're interested in kind of knowing if it's worth it and what's in there, happy to share that. So we picked up quite a number of things. One was several things from Lady Dot Creates. So this is a little thread keep, and it's got all kinds of little baubles on it. So it's Christmas related, of course, but there's a reindeer, there's a Merry Christmas, there's joy, there's a peppermint stick, so all kinds of little things. So that will be good for putting thread on in the future projects. Speaking of thread, we did get some thread. So I got a sampler Gentle Art pine, which is kind of a great pine green. And this is Holly Berry. And those both came with various different patterns. And so I pulled them out. So it's like, I'm not going to stitch those, but I'm going to totally pull those out and process them. And then we got several from Southern Fried Floss, which is a company that I have not used before, but we did get 5 very Christmassy colors there from them. So I'm looking forward to that. You know me, so I'm going to have to like see if it's color fast or not first before I use them, but those will be going into my stash as well. That's what these are going to do as well. And then we also got some Lady Dot chenille trim. This is Snow, so that'll be good for some finishing. And we also got a this is just kind of a merry collection of trims and charms. And so it's got charms, it's got all kinds of little finishing pieces, ribbons, some pom-pom trims, some things like that. So that'll be good as as we head into Christmas finishing season. Great for that. So some more Lady Dot pieces there. And then from Siki's Closet, we got kind of a project bag zipper pull, Christmas related, with that great little peppermint in the middle. And from Teresa Kogut, there was a pattern. It was a Sandra pattern, so not one that I'm going to be stitching, but it also we received a print. I promised to keep needlework in my hoop and try with all of my heart to stitch daily. And it's just a little print, and you can frame it or do whatever you want with it. Look at that cat. How could I not point out the cat? But I liked that. That was nice. And a little piece of foam core. Totally could use that. We also got, let me see here. And this is from Scarlet Sky Design, and it's a cross-stitch ruler, and it helps you figure out what count your fabric is. Like, you line it up and it's by inch, and it shows you linen and Aida, so you can quickly figure out what your, if you have a piece of mystery fabric and you want to find out the count. I haven't used it yet. I don't know if it's successful, but that seems really cool and useful. So that was Scarlet Sky Designs. And then we also got a number of patterns. So we got two from All Through the Night. And this is the one, oops, this is the one I really like. And this is actually a little fabric stocking. I wouldn't stitch the snowman. He looks, the little snowman pop is a little bit interesting, but I thought what you could do is you could take the star on a stick and put it there instead. So I'll combine those two projects. So that'll be fun. And I think these are older patterns. Some of them ones that we got were older patterns. I can't tell. So I don't know. Stocking Full and Smitten by All Through the Night. One of the new ones that we got was a Tiny Modernist, and it is Nordic Ornament Tree. That I think is lovely. You could also change the color scheme for a variety of different colors if you wanted to, but that one I think is one I really liked. So that's Nordic Ornament Tree. And then from Annie B's Folk Art, we got Christmas Pillow Tuck. Pillow Tuck. That one's just a neat little Christmas scene. I like the lettering. And then we also got an Erin Elizabeth, and it came with two different patterns. I would stitch those stockings. Those are great. Another one you could change the colors on very easily, go with any design that you want. So that would be a great little small. And I would say the same for those trees. I would do those trees as a little small. So that was nice. And I have not stitched any of her patterns yet. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity to try it out. So that's good. Oh, one other thing I missed. We also got a bunch of just little miscellaneous buttons of various kinds that you can put on any piece that you like. So that'll be a great little thing for finishing. So like I said, there were some other things in there that I decided to set aside and give away to other stitchers. But it was really fun. I don't know. Anytime you get a mystery box, you always have to know that there's going to be some things that you really like and some things that you maybe are not your style for various reasons. And so that's always the risk. But it's fun to open it up. It's fun to give yourself a little bit of a surprise every once in a while and go from there. So that is the end of the haul portion. Hopefully that you enjoyed it, saw some things that you liked, and yeah, anyway, thank you again for taking some time to spend a little bit of your afternoon with me, or whenever. Like, I always say that because I'm thinking about when I'm filming. You're watching this, who knows when. So I hope that you had a little bit of a fun time, got some good stitching in. Thanks for visiting with me, and I will see you again in the future. Bye, everybody.